Death. What do y'all know about death? Hello tarantula lovers, I'm Alex and you're watching Tarantula Haven. To you keen-eyed observers, you may notice that there's something a little bit different about the Tarantula Haven. If you look over to my left over here, you can tell that my bookshelf is not there anymore. Instead, I've got a new shelving rack, and that was made possible due to a subscriber. I had a subscriber contact me. They said they were going to be in the area and they wanted to know if they can purchase some of my Subfusca slings. So I said yes, and I met him and we made the exchange. I sold him some Subfusca slings, and I didn't realize it at the time, but then he told me before I left, he said, if you notice there's a little bit of extra money in there, that's for your channel. So he generously donated a little bit extra, and with the extra money I was able to buy a new shelving rack over here, and I also purchased some lights for it and this handy dandy remote control so that I can light them up instead of trying to go down there and push the button that I had for my timer. So that was pretty cool. The man's name, he goes by Gumbo, and I thought that was a unique name. I don't know if that's his actual name, but Mr. Gumbo, thank you so much for your generous donation so that I could expand my shelving unit here. And it was greatly needed because I had received that donation of tarantulas from Jay, and I was kind of out of room. So this helped me expand a little bit. The shelf that used to be here is now behind the camera over here. But yeah, I was able to get a little bit more expansion going on. So let's get back to the spooky lighting. Unfortunately, because this rack is a little bit deeper than my bookshelf was, it moved everything over this way. So I had to move my Love Cats poster a little bit. And I even added cool little lighting effects to that. I'd actually been holding on to those lights since Black Friday last year. I ended up buying some of those lights to use as decoration. Never had a chance to put them on anything. And I finally did put them on that poster. But now, since I had to move it over, my key light is casting a glare on my Love Cats poster, so I may end up having to move my poster out of the way so I don't get that glare. So I might have to think of something else to put there. And I don't want to do that because I love it, and I put a cool light on it, and now I've got a glare on there. So that may have to change. So as far as the skull is concerned, it is Halloween time. It is October, and some people can't wait for Halloween, and they pretty much celebrate the entire month of October. In fact, some people even start celebrating as early as late September. But you know, Richard of the Tarantula Collective created the Skull Gang, and he even created a Skull Gang sticker of people who put skulls into their enclosures. And you know what? I am not a member of the Skull Gang. Even though he sent me one of the stickers, I don't have any skulls in any of my enclosures. I have had skulls like this, and in fact, this skull is not a Halloween decoration. It's actually an aquarium decoration, and I've had them in my aquariums. I've even had them with some of my reptiles, but I've not had them in my tarantula enclosures. And part of the reason is because they have holes and everything inside of them, and the tarantulas get inside and it's really hard to pull them out, especially if they make their home inside. So that's part of the reason why I don't put the skulls into my enclosures. But another part is that I'm kind of like Petco of the Dark Den in that I really don't like the cheesy plastic skulls. And I can see putting an animal skull in there. I can see an actual animal skull. As far as human skulls, personally, I prefer something that looks a little bit more anatomically correct. I don't like the cheesy looking, kind of squashy, rounded skulls that don't look authentic, because to me that just bothers me. As a science teacher, you know, I did have some anatomically correct skulls, and they were replicas of actual human skulls. So I kind of grew fond of that because I had an actual skeleton in my classroom and I had some skulls. And as an art teacher that I started out as, we used to do a lot of anatomy drawings, and part of that was the skull. So it just bothers me to have a skull that is not anatomically correct. But I do like this one because it is relatively close to being anatomically correct, but I am not for those cheesy looking plastic skulls. So anyway, now that I found something, or I can use something that looks a little bit better, I may consider joining the skull gang, but I'm actually considering maybe doing some kind of backdrop that involves a skull. And I do have an idea for something that I want to do in the near future for my Monocentropus balfouri communal that may involve a skull as well. So that's just something in the future and something I'm thinking about, but nothing that I'm employing right now. The focus of this video, in keeping with the Halloween theme, I'm going to do a series of tarantulas for the entire month of October that are Halloween related. And it might be just coloration, as in orange and black, or mainly orange, or it might even be something that is kind of scary or spooky in their name. So today I'm going to focus on the Brachypelma hamorii, or if you prefer, hamorii. And a lot of people have been after me to do a species-specific video on this particular tarantula. So you can consider this a species showcase. I haven't done one of those in a little while. So I'm going to do the Brachypelma hamorii, which is basically, or commonly known as, the Mexican red knee. And this is a species that is near and dear to my heart because this is the first tarantula species that I have ever encountered as far as something that I would want as a pet. My earliest memory is of being in a pet store. My parents would go to the mall and they would drop me off at the pet shop, and while they did their shopping, and I would pretty much stay in the pet shop and look at the pets. And one time I was in there and they had a Brachypelma hamorii, or Smithy at the time, and I just fell in love. And the person that was there asked me if I wanted to hold it. They brought it out. I was holding it, and my parents happened to walk in just as I'm holding this tarantula. And it was just a beautiful tarantula. The colors were just stunning to me, and it was just something that I really just fell in love with. And I remember my dad asking me if I wanted it, but then he asked the price, and he was not exactly too fond of the price, so I never did get one. A few years later, I had a friend, and I was spending the night at his house when this was probably middle school, and his sister, who was about 18 years old, had one as a pet. So I remember looking at it and enjoying it. And oh, back then it was so terrible. It was in a little plastic box, and it had gravel, like aquarium gravel as the substrate. And of course he had the little water dish with the sponge in it and everything. And she didn't really pay much attention to it. So I remember being so jealous that she had it, and she was just like, this was something boring. But yeah, I just loved them. And of course I never actually got one, not until I'd started collecting tarantulas seriously. And this is one of those species that I just said, I have to have this species. So it was one of the earliest species that I actually did collect. The Brachypelma hamorii is an excellent beginner species that has been in the hobby for a very long time. Commonly known as the Mexican red knee because they come to us from the Mexican states of Colima, Jalisco, and Michoacan. This is another reason why they're dear to my heart, is because I am Mexican American and they are part of my culture. They are even in some of the Mexican artwork, and that is just something that I consider to be a pretty cool thing about the Mexican culture. Another cool thing is that they are protected in Mexico, and there are efforts right now underway to breed them in captivity to supply to other countries for the pet trade so that they do not get taken out of the wild and reduce their numbers in the wild populations. While they're not a huge tarantula, they can be thick and girthy and can reach an impressive 6+ inches in leg span. They're slow to grow and have a very long lifespan. Males can live for about 5 to 6 years, while females can live upwards of 30 years. So if you keep one as a pet and take care of it, you can have a pet for life. This female is 4 years old and is about 4.5 inches in leg span. My bee hamori have always been great eaters, but they are prone to fasting usually a couple of months before a molt. Their pattern is to eat well following a molt until their abdomen gets nice and round, and then they begin a fasting process that can last a couple of months, if not more, before they molt. I can usually tell when mine are approaching a molt because their colors become dull and less vibrant, and their blacks take on a brownish appearance. Recently, I've seen people debating on some Facebook groups about putting ping pong balls in tarantula enclosures to stimulate play because they will move them around. Although I don't understand the behavior, I don't think a tarantula's brain is sophisticated enough to need that type of stimulation. But one thing I do know is that this species is known for chewing things. I used to keep plastic vines in their enclosures as decoration, but I would always find the edges of the leaves chewed up from them gnawing on them. Because of this, you should be careful about what type of enclosure you keep them in because they can easily chew a hole through thin plastic or even a screen lid. Part of what makes this tarantula so popular is their handleability. They can be very docile and very easy to handle. Although they're slow moving, they are capable of short bursts of speed, so you should always be careful when you handle your tarantulas so that they don't fall down from great heights and don't run off of tables and such. And always keep in mind that every tarantula is different, so you may have a temperamental tarantula that is prone to biting, although most of the time they will flick hairs readily when they get agitated. They can be kept on straight cocoa fiber for their substrate, but I prefer to use a mixture of soil, peat, vermiculite, and play sand as my substrate because it's less fluffy and tends to pack better. They prefer a dry enclosure with a water dish for humidity and available drinking water, although I've never actually seen any of mine drink from the water dish. This must be because they come from an arid savanna region and much of their moisture comes from the prey that they eat. As slings, I kept mine in small pixie boxes with cocoa fiber substrate. I've never had them burrow. They'll usually set out on top of the substrate, although some slings will attempt to burrow under a piece of cork bark or something. As adults, they tend to sit out in the open, making them a perfect display tarantula. I keep a coconut hide in their enclosure, and sometimes they'll hide inside of it, but most of the time I'll find them sitting out on top of it instead. I usually keep about 2 inches of substrate in the enclosure, but I don't usually put much more because they've never attempted to burrow, although on occasion I have seen them moving things around the enclosure, like clumps of substrate or chunks of orchid bark. As you can see here, they're not great webbers. They'll just lay down a little bit of a web mat. This makes them ideal for those people that like to decorate enclosures because they will not web the whole thing up. This is a very close species to the Brachypelma hamorii. This is the Brachypelma smithii, formerly Anitha. And notice how I keep it in a small box that came from Fear Not Tarantulas. And it's pretty much getting ready to outgrow it, but it doesn't require much. And notice I just have substrate and pretty much bare bones. And it does just fine until I get it something bigger as it gets more size on it. I also don't keep a water dish with it. I just kind of moisten the substrate and keep it that way until it dries out and add a little bit more later. So there you have it, the Brachypelma hamorii, or the Mexican redknee. And you even got a little glimpse there of the Brachypelma smithii, or smithii if you prefer. And unfortunately, I only have the sling. I don't have an adult, but they are gorgeous as well. Very close, although in my opinion, the smithii is a little bit more beautiful, has just a little bit more color, and gets a little bit bigger. But it's just the classic tarantula. Whenever I think of old movies that involve tarantulas, I usually think of that particular species. That is usually in my memory of those, you know, anything crawling on people or just crawling around. Raiders of the Lost Ark, where the guy has them all over his back and so on. You know, it's just one of those things where that is one of the fondest memories of tarantulas that I have in movies and stuff. So yeah, they are just a gorgeous species, and I couldn't see having a tarantula collection without having at least that species in it, because they are just the classic tarantula in my opinion. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I try to be as thorough as possible of the tarantula care and all that kind of stuff, but they are a very easy species to keep. They're not very demanding at all, and they are beautiful pet rocks that just sit out on display all the time. And before I leave you, I do have a little bit of mail that I got in, and I wanted to make a mention of that. So this one comes to me from the UK, and I've been getting a lot of stuff from the UK. We've been doing a lot of trades, and this comes from 8 Legs 4 Wheels. And I didn't understand I didn't quite get the name of their channel until I went and visited and saw some of their videos. And that is because the guy that runs this, his name is Greg, and he is in a wheelchair. So 8 legs, tarantulas, 4 wheels, his wheelchair. So I thought that was pretty cool that he incorporated that into his channel. So Greg, if you have not seen his channel, go check it out. That is 8 Legs 4 Wheels. And this one I've kind of been holding on to for a little bit, and I didn't mean to, but I had other things that came up, and I wanted to make sure that I mentioned those things first before I got into this. And this comes to me from the UK also. There is a little message here. It says, "Hey Alex, hopes the stickers find you well. Thank you for being so amazing." You can probably tell who that is by the amazing. Take care, Amy. And Amy is from Pet Rock and Roll. There's her little card right there. And she sent me some Pet Rock and Roll stickers, which I've wanted. I'm going to put one of those on my laptop, and I'll put another one on my incubator. And she also gave me a couple of Tarantula Tubers Saturday Night Takeaway stickers, which I've also been wanting because she is one of the hosts of the Tarantula Tubers Saturday Night Takeaway. And she also helps to run the Balfouri Communal Club, which is a Facebook group, and she sent me some stickers for that. So thank you so much, Pet Rock and Roll, Amy. She sent me a little card that goes along with it, a little postcard. Thank you so much. If you have not checked out Pet Rock and Roll, I highly suggest it. She does some cool stuff. I'll put a link down below so you can see that. And she also is one of the hosts of the Saturday Night YouTubers. I can never say it right. Tarantula Tubers Saturday Night Takeaway. Yes, there we go. So, yeah, she's one of the hosts of that, and I'll put a link down to their Facebook page because they always switch who does it. So I can't just put, you know, like all of them on. Well, I can put all of them on there, but she, of course, is one of the hosts for that. So that wraps it up for me tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a like. If you want to see more, subscribe. If you want to support this channel, I have a Teespring store where I sell Tarantula Haven merchandise. Speaking of supporting this channel, I now have a Patreon. I started my Patreon. It took a lot for me to get going. I wanted to wait till I was 10K, and now it's here. Any support that you can give, great or small, would be much appreciated, and it will definitely help to keep things going and growing in the right direction. And speaking of generosity, thank you so much, Mr. Gumbo. If you are watching, I really appreciate your donation. I never expected it, and it has definitely gotten me out of a bind. Now I have room for my tarantulas, so I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And until next time, keep loving them tarantulas. Let's go!